The planet Etheria wasn't just beautiful. It was a living poem. Its vast swirling atmosphere shimmered with hues of deep indigo and soft violet, constantly shifting as unseen psychic energies pulsed through its very air. Glowing crystalline forests stretched towards the sky, their branches humming with a silent song, while rivers of luminous liquid snaked across the landscape, reflecting the distant, twin suns like spilled starlight. It was a place that hummed with a profound, almost overwhelming sense of otherness, a world where thought felt tangible and whispers carried on unseen currents. Humanity's presence here was a tiny, fragile pinprick, perched precariously on a high plateau, half built into a massive, naturally occurring crystal formation, stood Outpost Echo. It was a small scientific research hub, a collection of modular habitats and comms arrays, built for study, not conflict. The humans were here to unravel Etheria's mysteries, particularly its unique energy signature and the enigmatic abilities of its inhabitants, the Etherians. They knew little about the true depth of Etherian psychic power, only that it was unlike anything they'd ever encountered. At the heart of Outpost Echo was Dr. Aris Thorne, a man whose intellect was as vast as Etheria's skies, yet whose demeanor was quiet and introspective. He was a brilliant psychologist, fascinated by the complexities of the mind, and a skilled cybernetics expert, capable of coaxing life from dead circuits. For him, the Etherians weren't just a research subject, they were the ultimate puzzle, a living embodiment of the consciousness he had dedicated his life to understanding. His personal workspace was a curious blend of high-tech neural scanners and dusty, old-fashioned electronic hobby kits, full of basic wiring and early Earth logic gates, remnants of his childhood fascination with building things that thought. With Aris, and indeed with many of the other scientists on Outpost Echo, came their families. The mission was long-term, and humanity believed in bringing its whole self to a new frontier. Among these brave, curious young minds was Kai, Aris's 8-year-old son. Kai was a whirlwind of insatiable curiosity, his eyes wide with wonder at every glowing plant, every shimmering creature. He loved to explore, to touch, to understand how things worked. While other children played virtual reality games, Kai preferred to sneak out, just beyond the outpost's minimal perimeter, sketching the bizarre flora and tracing the strange, luminous currents that flowed across the ground. His innocent mind was a sponge, soaking up the alien beauty, completely unaware of the invisible, powerful forces at play. One warm Etherian afternoon, as the twin suns cast long, ethereal shadows, Kai, armed with his worn sketchbook and a handful of brightly colored crayons, ventured a little further than usual. He was following a particularly captivating luminous stream that seemed to flow up a massive, ancient, glowing rock formation. This wasn't just any rock. Unbeknownst to Kai, or indeed to most of the humans, this was a sacred psychic conduit for the Etherians. It was an organic, crystalline node, a vital artery through which their collective psychic energy flowed, sustaining their telepathic communication, powering their intricate society, and connecting them all as one vast communal mind. Kai reached the base of the glowing conduit, mesmerized. It pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light, like a giant, sleeping heart. He carefully placed his hand on its smooth, warm surface, feeling a faint vibration, a strange hum that tickled his fingers. He pulled out a crayon, intending to sketch its intricate patterns, but his hand slipped. The crayon, harder than it looked, scraped against the conduit's surface, dislodging a small, crystalline shard. It fell to the ground with a faint, almost inaudible ping. For a moment, nothing happened. Kai stared at the tiny shard, a fleeting frown on his face. He quickly tried to push it back into place, but it wouldn't fit. He felt a pang of guilt, a familiar feeling when he broke something. But before he could properly register it, the gentle hum of the conduit intensified. The rhythmic light pulsed erratically, growing brighter, then dimming, like a distressed heartbeat. Miles away, deep within their shimmering, crystalline cities, the Etherians felt it. A sharp, jarring discord rippled through their collective psychic network. It was like a sudden, violent tear in the fabric of their shared consciousness, a profound disturbance that caused widespread confusion and panic. Their perfectly harmonized thoughts fragmented. An ancient, sacred connection had been violated, damaged by the clumsy, oblivious Greys. Elder Xylos, the Etherian leader, a towering, translucent being whose core pulsed with a calm, steady light, felt the psychic shockwave deep within his essence. His calm patterns immediately shifted to agitated crimson. This wasn't just a minor trespass, it was an act of aggression against their very soul, a direct assault on the fundamental pillar of their existence. The Greys had gone too far. They had proven themselves to be not just primitive, but dangerous. The psychic silence that followed Kai's innocent act was deafening, a prelude to a storm of cosmic proportions. The Etherians would make them understand. The psychic silence that followed Kai's innocent act was short-lived. It was the calm before a storm, not of wind and rain, but of pure, unfiltered thought. Within hours, a subtle pressure began to build inside the heads of the human occupants of Outpost Echo. It started as a faint ringing, a persistent hum that vibrated behind their eyes, escalating into a dull ache that refused to dissipate. Nukunteta began to bellier. Then came the images. They weren't seen with the eyes, but felt directly within the mind. Distorted, grotesque visions of loved ones' faces, contorting into expressions of fear and betrayal. Flashes of personal failures, deep-seated anxieties, and long-forgotten regrets, amplified and thrown back at them with chilling clarity. These were mental projections, crafted with terrifying precision by the Etherians, designed to exploit the very vulnerabilities of the human psyche. The auditory assault was equally insidious, not sounds heard through ears, but voices whispering directly into their consciousness. Familiar phrases twisted into menacing threats. Laughter turned into mocking cackles. Sometimes, it was just a cacophony of chaotic, unbearable noise, a discordant symphony of illogical patterns that made their thoughts feel fragmented and scattered. Dr. Aris Thorne witnessed his colleagues, hardened scientists and resilient engineers, clutching their heads, muttering incoherently, their eyes wide with unseen terrors. Some retreated into themselves, their faces pale and drawn, succumbing to the overwhelming psychic pressure. "This isn't a physical attack," Dr. Thorne muttered, pacing his lab, his own head throbbing with a dull ache. He tried to analyze the incoming psychic signals, but they were too alien, too diffuse. "They're attacking our minds, our sanity." The Etherians weren't just attacking, they were mocking. Their psychic projections conveyed a clear message of scorn and superiority. They flooded human minds with sensations of being primitive, of possessing a noisy, disorganized mind. They showed them visions of intricate Etherian thought patterns, complex and perfectly harmonious, contrasting them with chaotic, illogical human thoughts. They projected feelings of their own deep, silent wisdom, making humans feel clumsy and brutish in comparison. The Etherians found human emotions, fear, anger, confusion, to be fascinatingly inefficient and illogical vulnerabilities. One of the most potent attacks was the insertion of nonsensical data. Etherian psychic systems were built on pure, elegant logic. They communicated through perfect, mathematical thought forms. To them, human thoughts, with their abstract concepts, metaphors, and irrational leaps, were an affront. So, they bombarded human minds with utterly illogical feedback, a series of unrelated numbers, colors shifting with no discernible pattern, fragments of impossible geometries. It was designed to overload the logical processing centers of the human brain, causing severe cognitive dissonance. Scientists found themselves unable to focus, unable to perform basic calculations, their minds wrestling with paradoxical thoughts that had no resolution. Kai, surprisingly, was affected differently. While adults struggled with the targeted psychic attacks, his young, less structured mind processed the illogical feedback with a peculiar innocence. He'd stare blankly, then start humming a disjointed tune, or drawing abstract, swirling patterns on his sketchpad. Patterns that strangely mirrored the chaotic data being projected by the Etherians. His parents watched him with worried eyes, unsure if his odd reactions were a sign of resilience or something worse. Dr. Thorne, despite his own suffering, forced himself to focus. He saw the toll the attacks were taking. His colleagues were becoming withdrawn, losing their ability to concentrate. Their communication systems, never designed to filter psychic noise, were overloaded with static and phantom whispers. Sleep was impossible. Panic was setting in. Their mission, perhaps their very survival, was hanging by a thread. He knew conventional defenses were useless. You couldn't shoot a thought. You couldn't build a wall against a nightmare. He looked at the psychic energy readings on his monitor, then at his old electronics kit, strewn with logic gates and tangled wires. The Etherians were attacking with precision, but their precision was also their weakness. They operated on pure logic. What would happen, he mused, if they encountered something fundamentally illogical, something that made no sense to their perfectly ordered minds? A wild, desperate idea sparked in his aching head, a chaotic whisper against the Etherian roar. He had to build something that could fight a thought, not with force but with confusion. He had to build a digital mind meld decoy. The air inside Outpost Echo was thick with unseen dread. Scientists, usually sharp and focused, now moved like ghosts, their faces etched with the strain of the Etherian psychic assault. Whispers of paranoia drifted through the comms, and the metallic tang of fear was almost palpable. Sleep was a distant memory. Conventional defenses, designed for physical threats, were utterly useless against the relentless mental bombardment. They were a flock of sheep surrounded by wolves that hunted in the mind. Dr. Aris Thorne, his own head throbbing, ignored the rising panic around him. He retreated to his private lab, a sanctuary of ordered chaos, and began to work with a frantic, desperate energy. He knew he couldn't fight mind with mind. He had to fight mind with nonsense. His eureka moment wasn't a sudden flash of divine inspiration, but a slow, burning realization. The Etherians attacked with precise, logical psychic patterns. Their entire collective consciousness was built on order, harmony, and predictable information flow. What if, Aris mused, their weakness was their inability to process anything but pure logic? What if, to their perfectly ordered minds, true randomness, true illogic, was a poison? He pulled out his old electronics kit, the one he'd brought from Earth, filled with nostalgia and forgotten potential. It was a motley collection, discarded circuit boards from ancient laptops, bundles of colorful wiring, salvaged radio components, and crucially, a handful of basic logic gates. These simple components, fundamental to early computing, processed information in a binary, yes-no fashion. They were crude, but predictable, and in their raw form, capable of creating complex sequences. His idea was simple, yet revolutionary. He would build a digital mind meld decoy. This device wouldn't fight the Etherian psychic signals with strength, but with pure, unadulterated, illogical confusion. It would be a psychic black hole of nonsense, a digital clown designed to make the Etherians' orderly minds short-circuit. The construction was a testament to his expertise and a touch of desperation. He repurposed a discarded comms relay casing as the device's main housing. Inside, he meticulously wired together the logic gates, creating a circuit that would absorb incoming psychic signals. But instead of processing them logically, it would scramble and rearrange them randomly. Imagine taking a perfectly coherent sentence and rearranging every letter and word into a gibberish jumble. That was the principle. The output would be a stream of nonsensical, chaotic feedback, utterly meaningless to a mind designed for order. Aris worked tirelessly, fueled by synth coffee and the image of Kai's troubled sleep. He pulled apart old toy robots for their tiny motors and wiring, scavenged blinking lights from defunct scientific instruments. The device began to take shape, a haphazard collection of gleaming wires, blinking LEDs, and repurposed plastic, looking like a child's advanced science project gone gloriously wrong. Then, an additional idea, a stroke of accidental genius, presented itself. As he was wiring the output module, Kai wandered into the lab, his face pale from the psychic whispers but his eyes still curious. He saw Aris working and, picking up a stray crayon, started idly drawing a swirling multicolored pattern on a piece of scrap paper. It was a completely abstract, meaningless doodle born of a child's free mind. Aris paused, staring at the drawing. A lightning bolt of insight struck him. The Etherians thought human minds were primitive and illogical. What better way to embody that scorn than by literally feeding them pure, unfiltered human chaos? He quickly rigged a small, salvaged optical scanner to digitize Kai's drawing. He also recorded fragments of Kai humming a nonsensical tune, and even a snippet of a child reciting an illogical number sequence. 1 blue, 7, triangle, happy. These elements, the random patterns, the illogical tunes, the nonsensical phrases, were programmed to be part of the decoy's output. When the device absorbed an Etherian psychic signal, it would not only scramble the input, but also overlay it with these utterly human, illogical elements. The decoy wouldn't just be confusing. It would be personally baffling to the Etherians, an embodiment of everything they considered chaotic and inferior. It was a digital clown, but its joke would be devastating. Finally, the digital mind meld decoy was ready. It hummed with a low, erratic thrum, its salvaged lights blinking in an unpredictable rhythm. Aris felt a surge of grim hope. He activated the device, positioning it in the center of the outpost's main comms array, where the psychic signals were strongest. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The overwhelming psychic pressure inside the outpost didn't vanish, but it shifted. The precise, targeted thoughts from the Etherians began to distort, replaced by a wave of confusion. The unbearable noise didn't stop, but it turned into a cacophony of frustrated, agitated psychic static. The Etherians were still attacking, but their attacks were now laced with their own growing bewilderment. Miles away, in their silent, synchronized cities, the Etherians recoiled. Elder Xylos felt a jarring jolt through the collective network. The psychic signals they were sending to the human outpost were no longer being absorbed or reflected in a predictable way. Instead, they were being met with a torrent of unintelligible, chaotic feedback. Images of illogical geometries, sudden bursts of random colors, and fragments of utterly nonsensical concepts, like a singing rock or a happy sorrow, flooded their pristine mental channels. Their advanced mind meld systems, designed for perfect logical processing, could not categorize this data. It was anathema, a psychic virus of unreason. The Etherian network, built on flawless logical coherence, began to strain. Their psychic attacks grew weaker, more desperate, as they tried to make sense of the digital chaos. The mockery in their mental projections turned to genuine confusion, then to a growing, unsettling sense of alarm. The primitive Greys had somehow built something that spoke a language of pure illogical chaos, a language the Etherians simply couldn't comprehend, and it was threatening to break their perfect system. The immediate relief on Outpost Echo was palpable. The crushing psychic pressure from the Etherians receded, replaced by a bewildering static that felt more like a distant, frustrated buzzing than a targeted attack. Scientists, though still shaken, slowly regained their composure. They looked at Dr. Thorne, standing beside his strangely blinking decoy, with a mixture of awe and bewilderment. He had, against all odds, managed to silence the psychic storm. But the silence that followed on Etheria was far more profound, and far more devastating, for the Etherians themselves. The digital mind meld decoy wasn't just deflecting their attacks, it was overwhelming their entire system. The torrent of illogical patterns, nonsensical data, Kai's drawings, the illogical rhymes, the random number sequences, and pure, unadulterated chaos proved to be a psychic poison. The Etherian collective psychic network, built on millennia of flawless logical coherence, began to overload. It was like a perfectly tuned, hyper-efficient supercomputer trying to process an infinite stream of random broken data. It simply couldn't cope. First, it was subtle. Elder Xylos felt a jarring disconnect, a momentary blankness in the vast shared ocean of thought that was their collective consciousness. Then, the internal communications within their shimmering cities became fragmented. Etherians tried to project thoughts to each other, but the messages were garbled, incomplete, or simply vanished. Panic, a sensation alien to their perfectly harmonized minds, rippled through their population. Within hours, the collapse became critical. The entire Etherian collective psychic network flatlined. Imagine every single phone line, every internet connection, every radio signal on Earth, suddenly going dead, simultaneously, forever. That was the scale of the disaster for the Etherians. Their communication, their technology, their very ability to function as a society, was inextricably linked to this network. Without it, they were lost. Elder Xylos, his form now a dull, flickering grey, felt the profound emptiness. He tried to project a command to his High Council, but his thought went nowhere, echoing back to him as a hollow, meaningless vibration. Etherian structures, once responsive to their mental commands, stood inert. Their power grids, designed to be manipulated by thought alone, went dark. Their carefully cultivated bioluminescent food sources, no longer receiving telepathic instructions, began to wither. They were a species of pure intellect, suddenly rendered powerless, trapped in individual, silent minds. They were mutually dependent, their individual consciousnesses designed to function as part of a whole. Without the whole, they were crippled. The initial shock for the Etherians quickly gave way to a cold, existential terror. Their very way of life, their understanding of reality, had been shattered by the primitive Grey's incomprehensible device. Elder Xylos, after struggling for what felt like an eternity to re-establish even a single coherent thought link with his people, finally faced the most humiliating decision of his existence. To save his species, he would have to humble himself completely. He would have to seek help from the very beings he had scorned and tormented. A small, single Etherian vessel, devoid of any aggressive intent, slowly approached Outpost Echo. This time, there was no psychic bombardment, no mocking projections. Just a single, desperate, fragile thought, barely coherent, sent directly from Elder Xylos to Dr. Aris Thorne's mind. Help us. We are broken. Back at Outpost Echo, the humans saw the lone Etherian vessel on their long-range scanners. Skepticism, even resentment, rippled through the outpost. They want to talk now? Grumbled a security officer. After what they put us through. They're coming without their usual psychic screen, Zia noted, pointing at her readouts. And their vessel's energy signature is muted. Something's definitely wrong. Dr. Thorne, however, had felt Elder Xylos's psychic plea directly. It was raw, stripped of all arrogance, filled with a desperate need he couldn't ignore. He gathered his core team. They're in trouble, he explained, holding up his own aching head. Big trouble. The decoy. It overloaded their entire network. They can't communicate. They can't run their society. They're asking for help. A tense silence filled the room. Memories of the psychic attacks were fresh. Why should we help them, Aris? Asked one scientist, her voice sharp with lingering fear. They tortured us. Aris looked at his son, Kai, who was quietly drawing a picture of a smiling Etherian. Kai, despite being the unwitting catalyst for this crisis, seemed to carry no malice. Because, Aris said, his voice firm, we're humans. And we help those who are truly in need, even if they were our enemies. Besides, he added, a glint in his eye, this is a unique opportunity. They tried to break our minds with their logic. Now we're going to teach them how to fix their minds with our logic, the messy, illogical, beautiful humankind. He knew it would be a hard sell, a painful process for the Etherians. It would be a lesson in humility for them, forcing them to accept principles entirely alien to their structured existence. But it was the only way forward for both species. The quantum conduit Kai had accidentally damaged was not just a symbol of their connection to Etheria, it was now a symbol of their shared fate. The atmosphere within Outpost Echo and the nearby Etherian city was charged, not with psychic dread, but with a crackling current of tension and a nascent hope. The great Elder Xylos, his form a subdued, almost translucent grey, stood before Dr. Aris Thorne, a testament to raw vulnerability. His silent plea for help, stripped of all arrogance, had resonated deeply with Aris. We will help you, Elder Xylos, Aris stated, his voice calm yet firm. But this is not about our primitive technology saving your advanced one. This is about understanding. Your network failed because it couldn't process anything outside its perfect logic. Our minds, messy as they are, thrive on the illogical. We will teach you to embrace it. The initial collaboration was an exercise in extreme patience for both sides. Etherian engineers, their forms pulsating with quiet bewilderment, observed Eris as he laid out basic circuit boards, wires, and logic gates on a sterile table. They communicated their profound confusion through fragmented thought forms, struggling to grasp the concept of physical connections and binary states, when their entire existence was a seamless web of telepathic resonance. Imagine your network is a beautiful, perfectly arranged library, Eris explained, his voice low and patient, using simple analogies. It knows where every book is, but if someone throws a bag of random letters at it, the library system breaks. Our logic gates, they're like tiny simple sorting machines. They can't read the books, but they can handle the random letters without breaking down. They can even make new strange words from them. He began with the basics, teaching them about electrical currents, basic coding principles, and the fundamental rules of OR, and NOT gates. It was a torturous process for the Etherians, whose minds moved at the speed of thought. To slow down, to conceptualize physical switches and discrete binary signals, was agony for them. Elder Xylos watched, his internal light flickering with shame and frustration, as his brightest mind struggled with concepts his species had long ago transcended. But then, a surprising bridge emerged. Kai, the little boy still processing the psychic attacks in his own way, would wander into the makeshift classroom. He'd point to Eris's diagrams of logic gates, then to his own abstract drawings. "It's like this, Elder Xylos," he'd exclaim, his voice clear and innocent. "This part of the box makes sense, and this part makes no sense, but they work together." His unburdened mind, free from millennia of perfect logical conditioning, saw patterns and connections that eluded the sophisticated Etherian intellects. Driven by Kai's childlike innocence and Dr. Thorne's patient guidance, the Etherians slowly, painfully, began to grasp the principles. They didn't build physical devices. Instead, they learned to reboot and restabilize their psychic network by mentally simulating logic gates. They learned to create internal firewalls that could filter out harmful illogical data, not by blocking it entirely, but by processing it in a way that didn't crash their system. It was like teaching their minds to have a healthy sense of humor, to find order in chaos, to embrace the paradox. The day the Etherian collective psychic network came back online was a moment of profound triumph. Instead of the pure crystalline resonance it once was, it now possessed a subtle, almost imperceptible fuzziness, a quiet hum of contained randomness. It was stronger, more resilient, capable of accommodating the unexpected. Elder Xylos felt the connection to his people flood back. But this time, he also felt a strange, new resonance, a quiet echo of human ingenuity, a blend of logic and delightful illogic. The psychic attacks on Outpost Echo ceased entirely, replaced by a cautious, inquisitive silence. In the aftermath, a new, unprecedented era began on Etheria. The Etherians, deeply humbled, recognized the value of human primitivism. They no longer viewed humanity as noisy greys, but as the chaos engineers, or the intuitive minds, beings capable of unique leaps of thought that defied their own structured logic. They understood that their pursuit of absolute logical purity had made them brittle. In return, humans learned from the Etherians. Dr. Thorne, Kai, and other selected members of Outpost Echo began a program of shared mind-link training. The Etherians taught them the basics of gentle telepathy, allowing humans to experience a taste of their vast, collective consciousness, albeit with carefully monitored psychic parameters to prevent overload. Humans learned to filter the overwhelming psychic input, to communicate directly without words, expanding their understanding of consciousness in ways they never imagined. Kai, with his naturally fluid mind, became adept at these nascent mind links, often communicating with Etherian children through shared images and pure, unadulterated emotion. The damaged psychic conduit, the source of the initial conflict, was repaired, not just by Etherian precision, but with human understanding. It now pulsed with a new kind of energy, reflecting both the ancient Etherian essence and the integrated logic of human intuition. In a final symbolic gesture, Elder Xylos projected a thought to Dr. Aris Thorne, a clear, strong message, tinged with genuine warmth. We are grateful, Innovator Aris. Your species has taught us to see beyond the perfect, to find strength in the unexpected. Dr. Thorne smiled, looking at Kai, who was now holding hands with a young Etherean child, their small forms glowing faintly as they shared a silent thought. And you, Elder Xylos, Aris thought back, his mind a blend of satisfaction and new wonder, have taught us that true intelligence isn't just about what you know, but about what you're willing to learn, even from those you once scorned. Etheria, once a planet of silent, logical perfection, now hummed with a richer, more complex symphony of thought, a blend of ancient psychic wisdom and newfound human ingenuity. The shared future, once unthinkable, stretched before them, a testament to the power of a single, innocent mistake, a curious mind, and the profound, transformative lesson of humility.